feminist movement in Dara.
With what?
Can you connect the feminist movement with Dara?
Oh,
Because it says that between Shia, they have the same neshama.
maybe. In other words, there's the feminist revolution in the positive sense, and then there is, how'd they burn it? You saying you can't burn stone? I don't know. Did they burn it? Did they burn the walls and the roof? You're saying? What does a fire do? Huh?
About the space shuttle, because that's the space, that's the place where humans experience the highest friction, the real fire comes from it. So, and they cannot be burned. They tried everything, metal would burn with such a speed.
So what do they use now? Ceramic?
They use mamish like
20,000 degrees.
that's what it is. Yeah, it's tiles, and sometimes they fall off and they catch the fire. The metal will catch the fire.
One that exploded, it fell off. One
Yeah.
tile came off, that's why it has the one tiles and it.
Wow.
But it's, you can touch it when 20,000 can touch it. It will not get burned.
No, ceramic.
That type of ceramic did not melt. So it's like a basic English, wood burns. The wood part is burnt. By the way, the first basic English was burned or destroyed.
Yeah, that's what I just asked.
That's what he just asked.
Oh, that's right. That was just
I
his
thought,
question.
yeah, that's what I thought both were.
Whatever you write, it goes into the cloud, and then you can edit it later.
Probably, I understand that the interior was burnt,
Wi-Fi, we don't have Wi-Fi, I'm guessing.
That could destroy
There's a memory stick in it.
You want to know how they just physically destroyed the Beis Hamikdash with all these stones?
Yeah, the mechanic, it comes with special notebooks. I know Rabbi
In Shalim, the buildings are all stone. They don't have a problem with fire. It's all built.
And it goes into,
I see.
converts it into computer tags. Access it from your phone, you can access it from your computer, or you could add graphics to it later.
Okay. Good, it's a good question. I don't know, I have to look into it.
Went 2 years ago, like back to the Jewish quarter, they have the first called the burnt house. Belonged to a kind, you actually see the burnt marks on the walls. I never went in, I just passed it always. I went in every once. You see it's standing still. The buildings.
Kuf Yud Ches Amud Beis. 1, 2, 3, 3 lines from the top. Kuf Yud Ches Amud Beis.
I actually had another insight because of the domain. Everything is according to scripture.
Has what music?
Are the perfect players because the music that they were given, that's the one they play. They don't change. They don't change their notes. They're like a drummers in the symphony. Boom, boom, boom. Constant whatever noise they meet. That's the noise that they're supposed to have.
Hey, Ginsburg.
From
Don't hide it, don't think you're hiding that.
So they're not changing. They don't have self-actualization and self-expression. Where everybody else, they grow, they become this and this and that, and they add to the cacophony of the world. Maybe not sometimes the most brilliant sound that they can produce. They can make mistakes. There is no mistakes. That's the sound that they have. So that's why the highest
Beautiful, thank you. Okay, Pesachim Kuf Yud Ches Amud Beis, 3 lines from the top. Reb Nosson Omer. The Gemara has been discussing Hallel, and the Gemara has been discussing why we chose Hallel HaMitzri to be said on Yom Tov over Hallel HaGadol. Different reasons were given. One is because Hallel HaMitzri has the 5 fundamentals of Jewish faith: Yitzias Mitzrayim, Kriyas Yamsuf, Matan Torah, Tchiyas HaMesim, and Chevlei Mashiach. Reb Nachman's reason is because it describes the escape of the souls of the tzaddikim from purgatory. And finally, Chizkiya's reason was because it alludes to the salvation of Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah from Nebuchadnezzar's fiery furnace, where they said, Loi lanu Hashem, Loi lanu kilashimcha tein kavod, lama yomiru hagoyim, etc., before they were cast into the furnace. And when they emerged, they said, Hallelujah Hashem kol goyim, Shabachu kol olam gavra aleinu chazdoi, and Malach Gavriel. Either they all said, Ve'emes Hashem lo'olam halaluka, or Malach Gavriel said, Ve'emes Hashem lo'olam halaluka, and the Gemara explained Malach Gavriel's unique role in that salvation as the spiritual minister, the angel responsible for fire. Gavriel comes from the word Gvura, which is associated with Eish, with fire, with strength, with heat, with intensity. And yet he goes and cools off the furnace, which is a nes b'toich nes. And he says, Ve'emes Hashem la'olam halaluka. Continues the Gemara and says, Reb Nosson says, Ve'emes Hashem la'olam dogim shebiyam amaru. The words Ve'emes Hashem la'olam halaluka were said by the fish in the sea. What fish? Which sea? Kid Reb Huna, this is based on a teaching of Reb Huna. The Amar Reb Huna said, Yisrael sheba'osei hador. The Jewish people of that generation, the generation that left Egypt, Miktane Amona Hoyu. Their faith was small. Miktane Amona means their Amunah was in a state of katnus. Their Amunah was small. Ukididara Rabbi bar Mori. Where do we see this? This was expounded by Rabbi, the son of Mori. Ma'ediksiv, what is the meaning of the pasuk in Tehillim? Vayamru al excuse me. Vayamru al yom b'yamsuf. The pasuk says in Tehillim Kuv Zayin. So Tehillim Kuv Zayin, Kuv Vav, I'm sorry. Tehillim Kapitel Kuv Vav. Avayseinu b'Mitzrayim lehiskilu nifla yisecha leizachru esreiv chasadecha. Vayamru al yom b'yamsuf, which means they rebelled or they betrayed you on the sea at the Yamsuf. What is the meaning of this? Where do we see a type of rebellion or a type of frustration or a type of betrayal after the miracle of Kriyas Yamsuf? Malamed. So Rabbi bar Mari said, Malamed, this teaches us Shehimru Yisrael ba'isa shah, that at that moment the Jewish people rebelled. Is that how they translate Himru? Rebelled? They rebelled at that time, Va'amru, and they said, Keshem shanu oilin mitzad echad, kach mitzrim oilin mitzad acher. We have not been saved. Just as we're coming up from one side of the sea, the Egyptians will probably come up from the other side of the sea. And what's going to happen? They will pursue us and continue the war against us. So Hashem tells the Sar, the spiritual minister governing the sea, ploit oisam liyabasha, eject them, spit them out to the dry land. Let the Jewish people see that they have drowned. In other words, according to the plan, they were submerged in the sea. That's where they were. They drowned. But the Jewish people, the were Ktane Amana, what did they say? It's not over till it's all over. This is not over yet. We went through the sea. We came up, but they also came up from another side. And you know what? The nightmare is still unfolding. So Hashem tells the Sar Shalyam, spit them out. Let the bodies, the corpses of the Egyptians emerge from the sea. And ultimately they had to be buried in the earth. Which is interesting because that allowed the Egyptians to be buried rather than to become fodder, disintegrating in the water and ultimately becoming fodder for the fish. So that was an interesting development that happened to the Mitzrim. And the Rashbam says that this was a special reward. If you take a look,
The wealth too? The wealth revealed or no? The
Yeah.
Mitzrayim wealth.
right.
Wait, was there float.
Their chariots were crossed with gold and silver.
The chariots have to be in the
stones,
water.
And they were washed out.
And in fact, there's a
Yeah.
documentary where they see something.
So whatever was washed up, yeah, the bodies were washed up. Probably other things were washed up. So it says that the Bizas Hayam was greater than Bizas Mitzrayim. Take a look in the Rashbam, second Rashbam on Kufiyat Chesed. Ploit oisim liyabasha, v'nitnu lekvura sham. They were buried. It may even be who buried them. He doesn't say clearly, but it may be that the Jewish people actually buried the corpses of the Egyptians. He just says v'nitnu lekvura. Somebody buried them. Where was this?
Why would the Yidden want to do it?
So he says, B'schus sha'amru, it's fascinating. Because when they approached the Kriyas Yamsuf and they saw what's going on, they said, Ki Hashem nilchem lehem b'Mitzrayim. God is fighting for the Jewish people against Egypt. V'hainu diksiv, that's what the Pasuk says, Natisa yemincha tivla'emei aretz, shenishba HaKadosh Baruch Hu la'aretz sh'lete'aneh shal k'vurasa. We say in the Shira that you have stretched out your right arm to make an oath that the earth should absorb them. Because the earth is sensitive. And the earth might say, I don't want to have those who wanted to kill your children. So he says, don't worry, Tivla Emeyaretz. Because they acknowledged at last God, when they said, Hashem nilchem lehem b'Mitzrayim, therefore they merited to have a dignity, the dignity of burial after they drowned in the sea.
That's the Egyptians saying, Hashem nilchem.
The Egyptians say it, and because of that, they were zoicha to have the kvura. Yeah.
What point did they say that?
When the sea split and they started to go in, and they saw what's going on, the water is coming back. So it says that the Egyptians said, "Anusa mipnei Yisrael." I wish I could run away. Ki Hashem nilchem lehem b'Mitzrayim, because Hashem is fighting for them against the Egyptians.
What's the end of that Rashbam? V'nishba HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
So v'nishbak Baruch Hu, Hashem made an oath to the earth, shaloi te'anesh al kavurasan, that it would not be punished for absorbing the Egyptian corpses and making the earth their burial plot. In other words, he told the earth, you're fine, you're good. It's the right thing to do, don't worry. In other words, the earth has to absorb things. It doesn't just happen on its own. The earth would not want to absorb them, so Hashem made an oath that they should be able to be buried. Now, it could be maybe that Tivla Emoy sounds like that the earth just swallowed them. So they weren't buried actively. I don't know. I don't know about that. I'm just saying it's interesting. It could be they were actually actively buried, perhaps. Huh? So that means that the miracle of Kairach happened earlier in history. That would be a shtickle chiddush. So that's it. That's why I'm just saying. Perhaps.
Oh, maybe it's Tivlaim with Tivlaim.
He's saying a Gzeir Shava. Tivlaim that they were swallowed. Could be. I don't know. Zok the Gemara weiter. The story is not over. Omar lefonov. Every angel has to take care of its own. So the minister of the sea turns to God and says, wait, Ribono Shel Olam, come on. The fish have been looking forward to this moment for a long time. They never had a dinner like this that would sustain them for weeks, for months, for years. Ribono Shel Olam. Klum yesh evet shenoisen lo Rabbi matana v'choyze v'noitel mimenu. Did you ever hear of a servant that his master gives him a gift, and after he gives it to him, he just chops it away from him? That's not what a master does. You don't do this. You have given the fish in the sea such a great gift, all this fodder, and now you're just depriving them from it. Because he knew that he's spitting them out and they're going to be buried, and that's it. So this is what the Sar Shel Yam tells to Hashem. Amar lo, Hashem says, Etein lecha echad u'mechzer shebehen. For the fish, I'll give you at another time 1.5 times of what you had now. In other words, the reward will be even greater than what you have now. Echad u'mechzer, 1.5 times of what you have now. Amaloi, he's not satisfied. He says, Ribono Shel Olam, yesh evet shetovei Rabbi. Did you ever hear of a servant of a slave who has the audacity, the chutzpah, to come demanding from his master that he didn't pay the debt? In other words, you're promising me in the future that it's going to happen. And what do you expect me to do? Come and demand from you to pay the debt? A servant can't do that. On one hand, he says when you give a servant a gift, you don't take it away. On the other hand, you can't expect a servant to have the chutzpah and come demand. So what are you promising me for the future? I won't even be able to demand it. That's what the Sar Shel Yam tells Hashem. Amar Loi, God says, Nachal Kishan Yeheli Arev. I'm going to create a guarantor. We'll create a guarantor. When you take a loan from somebody, and the person wants a guarantor if you don't pay up the loan, so you have an Arev. We're going to have an Arev. Nachal Kishan Yeheli Arev that I'm going to pay up. Now, there's two types of Arevim. There are two types of guarantors. There's an Arev and there's an Arev Kablan. A regular guarantor, I first have to come to you and say, give me back my loan, please. If you don't have, then I can go to the guarantor. An Arev Kablan is a guarantor who accepts upon himself the responsibility for the debt, meaning I can initially go to the Arev Kablan. I don't even have to go to you. It's a different level of a guarantor. So usually, I can't go to the guarantor if I don't first go to the borrower. But since, in this case, the Eved says, I can't even go to the master, I don't have a chutzpah to demand the debt from the master, so therefore both sides agreed that the guarantor for the Eved is going to be an Arev Kablan, which means that the Eved can go straight to him without going to the borrower. And who is this Arev? Nachal Kishan. And I'm saying this, the Marsha says this, because without this, the Gemara is not understood. It's not a regular guarantor. The Nachal Kishan, the river of Kishan, became the ultimate type of guarantor. You can go to him directly. You don't even have to first go to God. You can go straight to the guarantor to get back your debt that you still are owed from what happened by Kriyas Yamsuf when he deprived all the fish from the fodder of the Egyptians.
Isn't Nachal Kishan also an Eved?
Huh?
I know it's a guarantor, but how can an Eved have the right to anything that he owns is his master's, correct?
So we'll soon see. We'll see.
Why didn't Hashem say the horses are enough?
Oh.
Give you plenty of horses,
Miyad palat oisan layabasha. So the sea ejected them all into dry land. Uvo Yisrael v'ro oisan. And the Jewish people came and observed them. Shenemar, the pasuk says, Vayar Yisrael es Mitzrayim meisal svas hayom. Vayar Yisrael seyad agdol ashras Hashem b'Mitzrayim vayirom es Hashem vayaminu b'Hashem u'b'Moshe avdoi. It seems like till this point the vayaminu was lacking. That's why the Gemara says Ktane Amona. Now when they saw, like wow, all the corpses are here, finally, Vayar Yisrael es Mitzrayim meisal svas hayom vayaminu b'Hashem u'b'Moshe avdoi. Now they could believe in Hashem because they actually saw the Egyptian bodies themselves. They didn't see them live, but they saw them dead. Stam, in parentheses, an interesting story that once happened. I read this about the Noida B'Yehuda, who was the Rav of Prague, Rabbi Yecheskel Landau, in the 1700s. And I read about him that when he was a child, there was once a question that came to the Rav. It was a very interesting question. Two brothers got into a financial dispute, and the dispute turned very bitter and sour and extremely negative and toxic, to the point that one brother told his other brother, he says, I will never ever come to visit you and see you again in my entire life. Done. Our relationship is over. And he made a neder. Unfortunately, at some point later, that brother passed away. And, he felt bad and he wanted to come to the funeral. At those funerals, you could see the body. So he came to the Rav and he wanted to know if he could come to the Levaya because he made a neder that he's never ever going to see him again in his entire life. And he would see him at the funeral, at the burial, at the funeral. Is he allowed to go to the Levaya and the burial? I said, this is a good question. Wow, I don't know, it's a tough one. I mean, maybe you have to do Hataras Nadarim. Is that even possible? I mean, he really made his neder, I think he made it perhaps in a way that he couldn't do Hataras Nadarim. The Noida B'Yehuda was a child, and he said, what's the question? It's a clear pasuk in Chumash. I said, where's it? He says, Shmois, we say it every day. What are you talking about? So he says, Moshe Rabbeinu told the Jewish people, when they were standing at the sea, he said, you're never going to see the Egyptians again. A few psukim later, Vayar Yisrael es Mitzrayim, Vayaminu b'Hashem u'b'Moshe. Moshe just told you you're never going to see them again. Is the charaya? Seeing somebody dead ain't called seeing him. That's it. Rav said you can go to the Levaya. Interesting, huh? He said you can go. He says, clear pasuk. You don't need to go. Pilpul, Shulchan Aruch, Charayas, Halachas, Masechtas. Clear pasuk. That's not called seeing Mitzrayim.
I thought the Netherlands was against Hana from him. Not just Riyah, but Hana.
Yeah, well, by the Levaya, he won't have Hana.
He's going to have, it's like the guy who said that who said he doesn't get the money, the bread, and then he gets all the mitzvahs because
Right.
the other guy from hunger, so maybe it's a selfish interest.
Perhaps, yeah.
But isn't that what a nether Alpidin aims at? Is that I'm not going to take Hana from you. I can't.
Well, there could be different types. Yeah. Yeah. They wanted a loophole. Says the Gemara,
Don't have halacha by Nisim, we're not allowed to see their faces.
So I guess, yeah, so I don't know if it was the I don't know the mechanics of why he would see it.
They used to do back then. They used to have open casket back then. I saw
In
pictures
Bagoyim,
of the shtetls they had.
Bagoyim, they do it all the time.
I think we learned it from the guy in
I don't know. I don't know the answer to your question. Why he would see the goof? They could just cover it. I'm not sure.
About the 18th century here, you said?
Yeah.
So they would have.
I don't know. I have to look into it. I just read the story many years ago.
I'm just asking because he's saying did they have a minhag that was copied from other people?
Right. I know. It could be. I don't know. Frag the Gemara, my echad or mechza shebehen. What does Hashem mean? I'm going to give you 1.5. Like, I'll give it to you back. What's 1.5? I'll tell you why. The ilu, and l'chayre asked me a good shaila. It's ribis. God owes you. There's a loan. Hashem gave something to the fish, and then he borrowed it, so to speak. Right? He took it away. He gave it to them. He gave a gift, and then he said, "I need it back because I need to bury them, and I need the Jews to see." So now I'm paying back. Okay, pay back the loan, but paying 1.5, isn't that interest? Ribis, good shaila, interesting shaila. 1 second. Frag the Gemara, what's echod or mechza? Pasha, practically, what does it mean? It says, Dilu b'pariksiv, para is vayikach sheish meis rechav bachar. He took 600 choicey chariots that were superb. Bachar means chosen. Vilu b'sisraksiv, by Sisra, which is the war that happens in Sefer Shoftim, Perek Daled, vayazik Sisra kol richboi cha meis rechav barzel. Sisra, the arch enemy of the Jewish people, and a general who fought against the Jewish people. Sisra was the commander-in-chief of the king of Canaan, whose name was Yavin. We'll soon see the story. And he gathered 900 chariots of Barzel, made of iron, to mobilize them against the war of the Jewish people. So it's 600 versus 900. So that's what he said. I'm giving you 600 plus a half of 600, which would be 300, because this is Chameis Rechav Barzel. So he's not talking about only the chariots, he's talking about all the soldiers that fit into those chariots. By Paro, it wasn't only 600 soldiers, it was 600 chariots. It would be like an hour of a cavalry, would be 600 tanks. But in each one, there's many soldiers. By Sisra, there was so many more, commensurate with the number of 900. That's what he means by Echad or Mechza, 1.5.
But if you're talking about rivers, the value of the iron is the commodity there that's being purchased would be the gold, right?
No, we're talking about the fodder for the fish.
I'm talking about the question of one, Echad
Echad or
Lamechza, you said.
Mechza, 1.5, yeah.
So I want to suggest that the fact that one is of lesser value, even though it is of greater quantity, when we're talking about gold being the commodity and the iron being the
Right, so you're saying that Barzel is much cheaper than Zahav, and therefore it's not ribis. Right. But I think the question still persists because we're not talking about the metals here, we're talking about the bodies. And the bodies were obviously more.
with the soldiers of Sisera,
There were many more.
were they the same kind of warriors that the warriors?
But why would the fish care? They just want supper.
But they're going to dissolve anyway. So that you're going to say that the liquid has a greater saturation of dead, and
That's what it seems like, that there would be a greater saturation. Well, we'll get to it in a moment. Now let's remember the story. Sisera was the commander-in-chief of a man named Yavin. This is the times of the judges, Shveit HaShoftim. For 20 years, Yavin subjugated the Jewish people. This is in the beginning of the book of Judges, Sefer Shoftim, the first few chapters. Yavin subjugates them for 20 years. The Jewish people decide to declare war against him, and the war is led, as you know, by a Jewish woman. Her name is Dvorah Hanaviah, who also mobilizes a man named Barak ben Avinoam, and she says, come with me to war, as long as you're fine that God is going to deliver the Canaanites in the hand of a woman. If you're fine with that, if you have that bittul, then you're good to go. If not, then don't come. Don't come with me, because there's going to be a great victory here.
Were they married?
No,
No.
I don't think so.
There's a question about Yichud with the Devorah as a shofar.
She sat under the palm tree. Right. So Tosfos asks, yeah. Now, Sisera himself, as we know, was murdered. He was killed. He was killed by another woman whose name was Yael. As he ran away from the front, he entered into her tent because she was a friend of his family, and she had relations with him. She put him to sleep, and during the slumber, cheese and wine, I guess, milk. He asked for milk. And she knocked in a peg into his forehead. He was killed, and Dvorah gives a famous Shira's Dvorah that we sing and we say in the Haftarah of Parshas B'Shalach, which is the Haftarah of Shir. That's what happened to Sisera personally. But his army was also defeated in an extraordinary fashion, and we will describe soon the details. And the Torah says that he came out, the Pasuk says that he came out with 900 metal chariots of iron, and all of these chariots and all of the troops inside of them were all schlepped into the sea called Nachal Kishon. That's why Nachal Kishon, the sea called Kishon, is the guarantor for the debt that Hashem owes the Yamsuf. And the fish received the number of troops and soldiers that were promised to them in the time of Yitzias Mitzrayim.
Where it's geographically not Eretz
Eretz Yisrael. Nachal Kishon is Eretz Yisrael, yeah. So you're asking, how would the fish in the Yamsuf be satisfied with the fodder in Nachal Kishon, which is another river? Yeah? I guess the salmons, could travel 4,000 miles, so maybe they had to make a journey.
The river is going into the sea, that's not an issue. So
Right.
as long as that river went to that Yamsuf.
If the river is fed the sea, so ultimately I guess the fish got it.
Reward will be diluted then.
So maybe it's not ribis, because Echad Mechza is Nachal Kishon. By the time it gets to the Yamsuf, it's only 600, because the rest was stolen by the fish of Nachal Kishon. Not such a bad answer, actually. I don't think it's such a bad answer. The Echad Mechza is just to neutralize it, because then it's not coming directly to these fish. The Sarshal Yam was worried about the Yamsuf, unless he was worried about Nachal Kishon too.
The bones remain.
Huh?
The bones remain, only the flesh.
So the Gemara describes the story. Ki Asa Sisera, when Sisera came to fight, Asa Alayu Bedikre de Parzala. He came with spears, right? Spears? Dikre Barzala. How do they translate it? Spears of iron. Dikre are spears. Litkor is to stab. So Dikre here is spears, and Parzala in Aramaic is Barzel, which are iron spears. In other words, he came ready for a really bloody war, and he was a powerful warrior. Hashem extracted, he took out the stars from their natural pathways. Diksiv, as the Pasuk says, Dvorah says in her song, Shoftim, chapter 5, Judges 5. Min shamayim nilchemu akei. From heaven, the stars waged battle against Sisera. She continues, from their pathways, the various diversions of the astronomical bodies were fighting, caused a war against Sisera. What happens? As the stars descend on the troops of Sisera, Akdiru Hani Dikre de Parzala. The spears of iron of Sisera become flaming. They become very, very hot from the intensity of the heat. Nechis, from the stars, who diverged from their pathways. Nechisu li'ikarure. So the soldiers needed to bathe. So they went down into the river to cool their bodies. Lemische nafshayu, in order to bathe themselves, benachal Kishon, in the river of Kishon. They were so hot and their spears were burning, they decided to go into the river to have a little swim. Amalei HaKadosh Baruch Hu lenachal Kishon. Hashem instructs the river of Kishon, Leich v'hashlim ervoincha. Go and pay back the guarantee. You guarantored the Yam Suf years ago. It's time for payback. Miyad grafam nachal Kishon. So the river of Kishon usurped them, schlepped them in, v'yishlicham layam, and cast them into the sea. Shenemar, as the pasuk says again in Shoftim Hey, nachal Kishon grafam. The river of Kishon schlepped them, pulled them. What's the word? Grafam is swept them away. Nachal Kedumim, and he calls it Nachal Kedumim. Frag the Gemara, my Nachal Kedumim. Why is it called Nachal Kedumim? Nachal Shanasa Arev Mikedem, because it was the river that became a guarantor from the days of old, Kedumim. In other words, from the early days of Kriyas Yamsuf, it was standing and waiting to fulfill its pledge. Ba'isasha, that moment, Paschu Dagam Shal Yam, the fish of the sea opened up their mouths for Amru, and they declared, Ve'emes Hashem la'olam halaluka. That's why Rabbi Nosson says it was the fish who said, Ve'emes Hashem la'olam halaluka. Chizkiah said it was Gavriel by the Chanani Mishal V'Azariah, but here it's the fish in the time of Sisera who said, Ve'emes Hashem la'olam halaluka, that he fulfilled his promise and gave us the troops of Sisera in order that we should be able to be sustained in lieu of the Egyptians so many hundreds of years earlier.
It's actually interesting. In Israel, there is a place called Kidumim, which is, I think, the historical place of this Nachal. Yeah. It's in territories. It's, huh? There was. Yeah. No, now. Might be there is. I didn't see it. It's like there is a valley that it would have been.
They ask a question, why did the Sar of the Yam not trust Hashem? Hashem told him that I'm going to pay you back 1.5. He said, I need a guarantor because I'm not going to be able to demand the debt from you because I'm a slave. Why didn't he feel that Hashem will pay back on his own? Even if you don't call him out on it, he'll pay back. He said, I'm not going to be able to ask you. Hashem said, okay, well, I'll give you a guarantor. What's the point? Why do you not trust Hashem? So I saw...
Trust was damaged. Trust was damaged.
Because of the Yam, yeah? So I saw a Vart that he said, listen, I know you, God. The moment somebody does tshuva, everything, all the sins get thrown out the window. So we never know what's going to happen with Sisera and this. You see, by the Egyptians, the moment they mentioned God's name, so that's it, they got buried. Noisei oven, erech apayim, look what happened by Nineveh, noisei oven, Abesha. Therefore, I don't know. When it comes to these things, we never know if it's going to happen. So I need some guarantor that my fish are going to be fed because of the Koyach HaTshuva.
It seems so strange. They have these Sarim and Malachim, and they're arguing with Hashem.
Everybody's arguing with him. You're saying, huh?
From the day one, the trees are supposed to taste like the fruit, and the Malachim said, not so fair.
Yamsuf also argued. He didn't want to split.
Pardon?
The Yamsuf also didn't want to split the argument.
But you would think the Malachim, Hashem says something, okay, we have to do it. They argue. Gabriel wanted to save Abraham. Hashem said, no, you step back out of it.
Arguing against their nature.
I see another few answers why it's not interest. To give 1.5 is not interest. Because apparently Hashem observes Torah, so how does he do ribbis? So the Pesach Einayim says that the Marsha says that the Sar Shel Yam wasn't having a complaint mitzad din, mitzad justice. Mashakana eved kana rabbi. Says if you give a eved a matana, you can't take it back. But whatever an eved gets is really the master's. So even when you give an eved a matana, it belongs to the master. So he's not obligated anything. So it wasn't a demand in terms of you owe us. It was basically just we want you to be kind. So since it's not a loan that you owe me, so there's no ribis, I'll be even kinder than you want me to be. That's what the Pesach Chinayim says. It's not like you owe us something, so you got to pay it back. Don't pay extra. It wasn't a loan. I don't owe you anything. You're my eved. It's not a stranger that I gave something and then I take away the matana and I owe it them. If I give you a matana and then I come a day later and I take it from you as a loan, I have to pay you back. I can't give ribis unless it was a matana manas lahachzer. But here it wasn't a matana, a regular matana, because mashakana eved kana rabbi. That's what the Pesach Chinayim says. The Aderes Eliyahu says that the chariots of Pari were different. Usually, a chariot was drawn by 2 horses. By Pari, it says each one was drawn by 3 horses. So how many horses were there? 3 times 600. So it's 1,800, 1,800. Okay? And Sisra, it says, had 900, and each one, 900, and each one was 2 horses. So basically, it's again 1,800 sources. 1,800 horses. That means the burden in each chariot had to be identical, because if the number of horses was identical, so the quantity of things that they carried was also identical.
But it's a false logic, because horses remained in the sea. They didn't bury horses, they married only Egyptians.
No, he means that based on the numbers of horses, you can understand how many people these chariots could carry. That's what he says. It's a little difficult because Hashem does say echad umechza. I'm giving you 1.5. In other words, he's giving extra. So that's why he says, I'm not giving you the same, I'm giving you echad umechza. So it's a little, I think this answer is a difficult answer.
There's so many speculations. You can say, the Egyptians were so strong, and this warriors of Sisera were people from Ashur, very short.
That's what Rabbi Yaakov said, that the Egyptians were much stronger.
Yeah, 900 small ones.
In terms of the food for the fish.
Yeah, for the fish.
So he says 1.5. Okay.
With 3 horses, they had more food than.
Yeah. Now, what is the meaning of this? There's a beautiful interpretation of the Blavitzak of Barditchev in the Sefer Kedushas Levi, Parshas Yisroi, which is actually the Kriyas HaTorah of Shavuos, on this Gemara. He says a very interesting interpretation. They bring it in the back of the Mesivta Gemara in Kaftav Aferach. When Hashem introduces himself before Matan Torah, he tells Moshe to tell the Jews, Atem re'isim asher asisi leMitzrayim. You saw what I did to the Egyptians, and I carried you on the wings of eagles. Va'avi eschem elai, I brought you to me. So he says that, excuse me. Can't get potter from this phlegm. You have a chumash? You mind giving me a chumash, the blue one, over there in the bookcase? Thank you so much. So he says Rashi's medayik. It says in Parshas Yisroi. Hashem says to Moshe, tell the Jews, Atem re'isim asher asisi leMitzrayim. You saw what I did. Atem re'isim. You saw. Atem, you. Re'isim, you saw. Now, Atem re'isim is redundant because re'isim in Hebrew is you saw, right? Ra'isa is you saw. Re'isim is in the plural, you saw. So Atem is redundant, right? You could say Atem. Right. He could have said Re'isim. Why'd say Atem? Then he says, I carried you on the wings of eagles, Va'avi eschem eloi, and I brought you to me. I brought you to me. Rashi says, what does it mean? I brought you to me? So he says, look in the Targum. Targum says, I brought you close to worship me. V'kravis yaschain lepulchani. That's what the pasuk says. So the Barditchever says the word Atem is superfluous. Yeah. The word Atem Re'isim. Okay. And then he says, even at the end, "Va'avi eschem elai," I brought you to worship me. It's before Matan Torah yet, so I didn't yet bring you to worship me because most of the mitzvahs and avodas Hashem was given only later. So he says as follows: when you look at the Shiras Hayam, at the Song of the Sea, the majority of the verses deal with one theme, that the Egyptians drown. He says, I would have thought the majority of the verses should have dealt with something else, that the Jews were saved. When you look at the sea, Az Yasher Moshe, right? Sus v'reich v'ramavayam. Shamish Mulchama, Markavas Paroi, Natisiyam in Chativla Eimay Aretz, Shamu Amamir Gazan. Most of the psukim deal with the drowning of the Egyptians, not with the salvation of the Jewish people. So he says, the Gemara says here that the Jews were Ktanei Amona. They didn't have a lot of Amunah. And they said, we're going up this way, and the Egyptians are going up this way. He says, what did they mean? We're going up this side, the Egyptians are going up that side. They could have turned around and see the matzav. They saw the water coming back. I mean, you had a lot of Jews. They really believed that the whole Kriyas Yamsuf was a mistake, that God split the sea, it was just random. They made it through, and therefore the Egyptians also made it through. Like, it's really strange. They really believe the Egyptians are coming up from the other side. He said, when you look at the Gemara, the language is, they said as follows: Kishem shanu oilen mitzad echad, kach mitzrim oilen mitzad acher. We go up one way, and the mitzrim go up another way. So he says, there's two types of relationships. There's two types of emunah. One is a person has inner conviction that something is true, and therefore they accept it. Another thing is, a person will not accept it. But if he sees the person's greatness, or he sees the grandeur, he sees a miracle, then he's going to accept it. In other words, he has to be proven that this is right, this is true, and when he sees it with his own hands, then he'll have emunah. So the pshat of Ktanei Amona was that what allowed the Jewish people to believe then was not inner conviction. It was the display of miracles. They saw so many miracles they could not believe. Both in Egypt and Kriyas Yamsuf, they just saw tremendous miracles. So b'meila, it wasn't sometimes a person, he thinks, he searches, he discovers, and he says, this is true. Can I see I don't see miracles, but it's true, it's emes. In a way, it's not so exciting, but it's much deeper. Another person says, no, I don't believe. But if you show me one miracle after another miracle after another miracle, I'm impressed, I'm overwhelmed. It's basically, I'm not so much believing in you, but basically you impressed me so much. There's a lot in it for me. By believing in you, I gain so much. Because if you have the power to do so many miracles, so then it's great for me. So he says, the Jews said, Kashem sha'anu oilam mitzad echad, kacha mitzrim oilam mitzad sheni. So they didn't only mean geographically. They meant something even more. They meant spiritually. What were they saying? They were saying, the Egyptians are seeing so many miracles now. At some point, they're going to have to start believing. You got to be crazy not to. I mean, they saw 10 makkahs. At the end of the 10th makkah, they broke. Yeah. Now they're coming here. They see Kriyas Yamsuf. At some point, they're going to start believing, unless they're Meshiga. They're going to see what's going on. And if that happens, basically they're just like us. Then what's going to happen? God will do miracles for them too. The only reason God does miracles for us is because we believe in Him. We believe in Him. Why? Because of the miracles. That level of awareness they're also going to get at some point. And if they're going to get at some point, they'll also have their aliyah. Just like we have an aliyah, they'll also have their aliyah. That's what he says. They said, K'moshe anu oilim. Just like we have emunah now, because of these miracles. So therefore, they're also going to be oilah. They'll also ascend. They'll also have a miracle. They'll also be able. It's impossible not to believe. They're also going to start believing. Once they start believing, then God is going to be here for them. Once He's here for them, oy gewalt. Oy gewalt. So he says that one of the greatest things here that happened was that the Egyptians were so stubborn that even after they saw Kriyas Yamsuf, they still would not believe completely. After all the miracles, they still, Vaharaya, they chased the Jews to Kriyas Yamsuf. How could you chase the Jews after everything you saw? But their insanity was so deep, their addiction was so powerful, they were so crazy, that they couldn't even accept that. They were so stubborn that all the visualizations in the world could not deter them. And that's why they perished. That's why he says, Atem Re'isem. You saw, the Egyptians never saw. Atem Re'isem. They never saw. Sometimes people could see, but they just don't see. It doesn't touch them. Atem Re'isem. They could have had the same emunah. Va'avi eschem elai. Through the miracles, not before the miracles. That's the Va'avi eschem elai. But they didn't. And that's why he says the great Shiras Hayam was not so much the salvation of the Jewish people. Equal to the miracle of the Jewish people was the miracle of their stubbornness. That they remained stubborn and would not pass and would not surrender to the miracle. He says that in a way is more astounding than anything else. How people can be so stuck in their biases and their hatred not to see miracles. That's the Vart. And yet, their small acknowledgement of God caused a miracle. You see, the Jews were right. They spit out, they had an aliyah. They had a kvura. Even that acknowledgement. So imagine if they would have acknowledged more, they could have had a Kriyas Yamsuf. They would have had a Kriyas Yamsuf, and then they would regret it, the Jewish people would again be enslaved. So that's the great emphasis of Shiras Hayam, that people can be so crazy and sick that when you hate somebody, you don't see anything. That's the oilin mitzad acher, not just geographically, spiritually through their emunah. They say that there was once a big fight in Radin, that's where the Chafetz Chaim lived. And a person who was beyond the whole machlokes, one of his children fell very ill. So the Chafetz Chaim came to see him, or he came to see the Chafetz Chaim. The Chafetz Chaim told him that, you never know the reasons for anything, but maybe if he would stop the machlokes, it would be very good for his child. So the man said to the Chafetz Chaim, he says, all my children can die, I'm going to win this fight. Okay? Now, you think about it, how can a person speak like that? But that's the pshat. The insanity of the ego, of hatred, of machlokes, of venom, of ego could be so deep that people will sacrifice what they love most just to win. But you see it all the time. You see families that split up and will not speak, will fight, even though it destroys them, it destroys their kids, destroys their grandchildren. Nobody goes to simchas anymore. They can't sit together by their mother, by their father. They can't go to a chasana together. Why? Fighting. A house, money, a business, an argument, a lawsuit, an issue, a yerusha, whatever it is. An argument, you didn't give me the right bracha under the chuppah. This is the blindness of hate. It turns you into an irrational person, and you do things that undermine yourself. That's the power. People, you have to be careful. You have to stand back. So that's what he's describing. Atem re'isa. Sometimes people could see everything and they don't see anything. They're blind. That's the oilin mitzadach.
You got to see your own paradigms.
You have to see your paradigms, and you have to see if your thought process is being tainted by emotions that you're going to regret one day very, very badly.
I have difficulties with this last explanation.
Yeah.
Because it says Hashem hardened our heart.
That's I guess that's the v'chizakti slave para.
And it says in the Bechirim, they made the revolution, Shabbos HaGod.
Yeah.
And they started.
And they still didn't release them. That's the v'chizakti slave para. By the way, v'chizakti slave para is not necessarily a miracle. It may be a neurological process. Because freedom is a muscle. If you don't use it, you lose it. Do we have freedom or don't we have freedom? Do we have freedom or don't we have freedom? Huh? If you look at the amygdala of the brain, it's flight or fight. It's all instinctive. We do what we feel right now we have to do. There's the prefrontal cortex of the brain that can deliberate, that can think of things long term. I'm speaking now pure from a pure medical perspective. There's a part of the brain that is purely instinctive, flight or fight. There's a part of the brain that can think very much long term. It can delay gratification, it can delay impulse, it can delay pleasure, and so forth, right? But what if my neural pathways, that sections are not developed? I don't even know that I have that opportunity of freedom. Freedom is a gift, and the more you use it, the more it exists. The less I use it, the more I lose it. It's like mamish, like a muscle. You don't move your body, it becomes old and decayed and not functional. Paroi was that person who followed completely his cravings, his addictions, his hate, his genocidal impulses. And you know what happens after a while? After a while, you really don't have freedom anymore, because your entire condition is trapped. And when a situation comes up, you don't even know that you have a choice. Because the more we exercise freedom, the more our brain develops neural pathways. So when the situation comes up 6 months later, I actually know that there's a choice. So it's mamish, it's a consequence. It's a consequence of what he did. Sometimes a person lives a certain way, like an addict. An addict, at some point, his brains are fried. It starts by choice, and then at some point, I have no choice anymore. It's so predictable, my brain now tells me I have no choice, and I really don't. I lost that gift. Okay.
Is Nebuchadnezzar a good model of someone who was a complete Russia, but believed in Hashem, and through that he had Siyata B'Shmaya?
Yeah, the Gemara says in Sanhedrin that Nebuchadnezzar merited 3 generations of world dominance because he took 3 steps to honor God.
So the shot of
Yeah.
So we see that Hashem
Yeah.
works miracles.
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
even Rasha.
Basically, Nebuchadnezzar he took dictatorship. He was a secretary for the king, and the king wanted to write a letter to the Assyrian king wanted to write a letter to Chizkiah Melech Yehuda. And he wrote to Chizkiah and to his God. And Nebuchadnezzar took the letter, and as he went to give it over, he saw that the king is before God. So it says he took 3 steps, and he says we have to redo this letter to honor God. Where it says because of the 3 steps that he took, he was given melucha for him and his children and the next generation. Gewaldig, yeah. Yeah. Tayere Yidden.